Welcome everybody to another CPS IMG initiative that we have for you. We have our third sort of annual mock interview session where we kind of put ourselves out there and try and simulate a medical residency interview. So by now, everybody has submitted and signed their application, and it's out in the cyber world being downloaded by programs, and they're looking over to hopefully send interviews out to everybody and give programs about 2 weeks. I think a lot of programs, from what I'm talked to, they are looking through all the applications in a holistic way. So they don't want to just put applications on the side, but they'll look at every application because all of you have done so much hard work and are applying to their program. So hopefully interview dates will go out to all of you by the end of next week. So look forward to that. In the meantime, everybody should be relaxing. You've been stressed out, working hard, making your application and CV and putting forth the best application that you can or could be. And now I think the emphasis should turn to how to give your best interview. So there are a couple of things that we brought into CPS about 2 years ago. And we started with the first CPS mock interview session on how you should prepare for these interviews. So today, I'm delighted to have volunteers that will be helping. But first, before that, I want to introduce Deborah and Yasmin, who have been championing the IMG initiative here at CPS. So we'll start with Deborah. Can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We really appreciate it, everyone being here. It's our third year doing this episode. So I will put in the chat the link of the last 2 years, and I hope this will help you all to get a good interview. Yasmin?
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here this year. Deb and I have been working alongside our amazing members of CPSolvers, Dr. Ravi. Thank you so much, Ibrahim, Dr. Jas, Marcela. This is our stellar interview today. Sorry for the sound. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much and appreciate all your efforts to make the CPS IMG initiative a success. And we have today 2 volunteers. So Marcela, who's currently a PGY1 in St. Louis at Washington University. Are you able to unmute your mic and also introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. Hello, everyone. So I'm Marcela. Like Dr. Ravi mentioned, I am a PGY1. So at this time last year, I was freaking out about the interviews. But yeah, I just want to wish good luck to all the applicants, and I really hope that's going to be helpful. But also, I know you all got it, and it's stressful, but you make it, and it's going to be great. Okay. Awesome, thank you. And I remember back we did mock interviews, and Marcela became very comfortable in giving the inner ability to give an interview. So definitely does help. And our next volunteer is Ibrahim. If you're able to unmute your mic and also introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ravi. So my name is Ibrahim, and I come from Saudi Arabia as well as Sudan. I'm currently a medical student based in Saudi Arabia. Very excited to be here today with the superb interviewees and interviewers as well. And I truly hope that you guys get the most out of this session.
Awesome. Thank you. And the third interviewee will be myself. I'll be acting as an applicant just to go through some difficult questions. I didn't want to put anybody on the spot, so I gave myself probably some of the most difficult questions, but that way you can sort of understand how maybe to tackle. There's no wrong answer, but we'll highlight what's the best way to answer these questions and probably what not to do when answering these questions. And our third volunteer or fourth volunteer is Jasti Bajwa, who currently is an attending, was a chief resident, and has some experience in interviewing. So I asked him for his help in contributing to today's episode. So if you're able to mute your mic and also introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi, and thanks for having me. You said all the highlight points. So I served as chief at the University of Rochester, family med program, and Interviewing is always fun. On the interviewer side, I can acknowledge on the interviewee side, it's nerve-wracking. So I hope the session is great, and thank you for having me here.
Okay, to get started, we'll have Jas start the first simulated interview. You'll have about 5-10 minutes. We'll see how you pace it, and at the end we'll do some feedback. So we'll be taking notes, and then we'll discuss the interview and the questions. So Ibrahim, you're up for the first mock interview.
Right. Hi, Ibrahim. My name is Jas. I'll be interviewing you today. How are you doing today?
Great, I'm doing great. So happy to be joining this interview.
Well, we're happy to have you here as well. So let's get started. The first question I wanted to ask you, Ibrahim, is so tell me about a mistake and how you handled it.
Right. So I'm currently a medical student, and I'm currently on my OB/GYN rotation in med school. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was actually on rounds with the team. Prior to the rounds, I was at the nursing station with a resident, and we were talking about an interesting case that had just been admitted to the floor. And I also had a patient that I was planning to present. And I remember just before the rounds had actually started, the resident asked me for a laboratory test that we sent for both patients, the patient I was presenting and the interesting patient he was intending to present. And so what I thought that he was asking me for my patient. So I reported the result that came back. And then during the interview, what happened to be the case is that the attending on the team asked the resident for the same laboratory test that we ended up sending. And he told her the lab result that I had told him prior to the round. And so when he said that, I immediately realized what was actually happening. And so I was terrified of what the attending was going to react. And how she did actually react was that she belittled him. She called him out in the middle of the room, in front of all of the residents, in front of all of the medical students. And because of it being a shared room, there were also three other patients in the room as well. And I remember, and I'm quoting here, she said a comment. She said that it seems that they're now accepting everyone into this program, which did not happen to be the case. And when it was my time back in the day. And then I remember immediately after that comment, there was like a 3-second silence in the room. And prior to moving on to the next patient, I made sure to speak up and I explained the situation. I told her that what had happened was most likely because I had miscommunicated to him the lab result. And it seems that she took some time before she replied back. But when she replied, she actually apologized to the team. She apologized to the resident, who actually felt humiliated. And she made sure to explain herself. She said, when I was on my way to the hospital today, I had a car accident. And it seemed that because of that, I was in a bad mood today. But she also made sure to explain that that was not grounds for actually, speaking to someone the way that she did. And I think that was a great lesson because it taught me that sometimes it's important to speak up in the same exact moment. I could have waited until the rounds ended and explained myself to the resident or to the attending, but this resident would have still carried that the way that he felt during the rounds, maybe until the end of his residency and maybe beyond. So.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Well, first of all, that must have been difficult to come out and say that the mistake come from you, especially how she handled the situation earlier. But that shows a lot of courage, that the way you handled that. Thank you for sharing that experience with us. So I guess my next question is, have you held any leadership roles?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to attend a college that actually does not only emphasize academia, but also extracurricular activities. So from very early on, I was involved in conferences, as well as organizing different talks that happened at my college. But just a couple of weeks ago, I concluded my role as student body president. And it had taught me a lot. It didn't only teach me leadership roles, but it also taught me to understand the circumstances that people were coming from. So because my college is a large college, it's a large university, it spans 3 different cities. we had members at the student body from different cities and different colleges. And there was this one member who showed great initiative ever since we'd started. However, at some point, she stopped responding to our texts. She wouldn't join our meetings. She wouldn't respond to her phone at all times. And then just a couple of months went by and she started attending our meetings again. And we asked her what went wrong. And she explained it. She said that, my mom died, and all of a sudden I found myself as being the major breadwinner in my family. Put in mind that this is a Saudi woman who's also going through her medical degree and is now caring for all of her younger siblings. And so it was important to learn from that specific instance that you're dealing with human beings. And as human beings, we go through different challenges through our lives. So it's important to keep that in mind at all times.
Thank you. It seems like you had lots of great leadership experiences there. So I guess the next question I wanted to ask you, Ibrahim, is when stressful events happen, how do you cope with them?
Right. So I'm actually fortunate enough to live in a part of my city known as Abhar, which is in the northwestern part of Jeddah, and it's very close to the beach. And so whenever I feel stressed out, I just hop on my bicycle and ride near the beach. The beach has a very symbolic value to me. Reason being is that, as I've mentioned, I come from Sudan. And Sudan is actually currently going through several unrest in the country. Sometimes it goes years before I actually meet some members of my family, unlike the other half Saudi part of my family, which I meet almost on a weekly basis. And so just being near the beach and remembering that it's literally just that body of water that separates me from these amazing people whom I know have a large place in their heart for me, brings a lot of solace to me as an individual. It reminds me that no matter what stressful situation I'm going through, it would never actually be as stressful as what they're going through at the moment.
Great. Thanks again for sharing that. I'm sorry to hear that you're, separated with your family like that. Probably definitely not easy. So my next question to you, Ibrahim, is what do you do in your free time?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. I do a lot of things. I like listening to music. I also do Arabic calligraphy. I have some stuff on my phone if you'd like me to show you.
That'll be great. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, Arabic calligraphy is pretty complicated. In order to master Arabic calligraphy, you have to go through years of training. But I was fortunate enough in my high school to actually had a teacher who was one of the greatest artists when it came to Arabic calligraphy. So this is actually some work that I'm currently working on. Here it says Rahim, which is basically, so this is the letter A or Alif in Arabic, and then this is the letter Lam, and this is the letter Ra. So if you look at it, it seems like really complicated art, but in reality, it is complicated because of how much you have to put into it as an individual. And so in order to draw these letters, I know that they might seem simple, but in reality, the way that you hold the pen and the way by which you write all of these letters goes a complicated way. And if you mess up one single, you mess up the entire word and you mess up the entire sentence. So yeah, I like to work on Arabic calligraphy in my free time. And also music has always been a large part of my life.
Wow, that's so impressive and such a beautiful calligraphy and writing. I feel like every time I write something, people just mistake it from a fifth grader. So it's much more different than that. So I guess the next question we should move on to is, if you could be any animal, what animal would you be?
Okay. I think if I had to choose one animal, I think you could probably guess from my background, but I would want to be a camel. I'm not saying that just because I come from the Arab world. Camels are actually an international animal. If you travel to Australia, you would probably find more camels than you would find in your typical Arabian country. However, I'm saying that because camels in our culture, in our community, are looked as counterparts rather than animals. Reason being is that back in the old day, before we actually had oil and got the chance to connect with the rest of the world, how many camels you had gave much more status to you as an individual, gave much more social status to you, because camels were not just seen as a mode of transportation, but camels in reality would provide furniture, they would provide housing for you, they would provide food, so they would provide shelter as well. Reason being is that, again, back in the old days, the way by which they would provide furniture is that when they would die, people would use their skin as furniture inside their tents. And then they would provide housing or shelter for you because of their because of their skin, once again. So people used to use their fur as well as their skin in order to build up their tents. And then they would also provide food for you through their milk. And then camels as creatures, actually, they withstand very hot temperatures, and they can go for like months without drinking or eating. And that seemed to be very much the custom in the region at the time. So yeah, so if I wanted to be an animal, I'd definitely want to be a camel.
Wow. I don't think I ever learned more about camels than I did in the last 5 minutes. So that's amazing. So the next question I wanted to ask you was, let's say if you came up, so let's say, imagine you're a resident, or an intern, and you come across your fellow intern and they're upset about something. How would you respond to that situation?
Right. To be honest, if I had to give a simple answer, I'd just say being able to connect with them as a human being. Medicine as a community or as a specialty is a very long specialty. You'd have to go through medical training in certain countries. You'd have to do bachelor's beforehand, then residency, then fellowship. And sometimes it seems like it's a little bit too long. It can seem isolating. So just being able to actually recognize that someone is upset and someone is going through hardship, I think goes a long way. Reminds me of the time we had one student at the time in college, in med school, and he was a really funny person. Like, he would come into the class and he would make everyone laugh at his jokes. All of a sudden, the guy would show up to our class, he would put on his hoodie, and he would put on his head on his desk. He would sleep until the end of the day, and that's it. And he would come the next day and do the same exact thing. And then I remember he did this for like a week, and I noticed, I reached out to them. I tried asking what went wrong, and he just started crying. He said, "You're the first person who actually reached out and recognized me. You know, people used to laugh at my jokes all of the time. However, when I was alone, it seems that no one cared about me as an individual." He was going through some financial hardships. His family lost a lot of financial status. He was coming from one of the biggest families in the country. Eventually, they regained everything at the end of the day. But I think just reaching out to that person and actually showing that, hey, I'm noticing you, I'm seeing you as an individual, I know that you're going through hardship, went a long way in relieving the stress that they had.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That was pretty impressive. Now let's switch it up and ask a fun question. Not so much serious one. If you could be an athlete, what sport would you play?
Oh, if I could do one sport, I'd probably do gymnastics. Reason being is that, like, in gymnastics, you probably have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of physical effort, just like any sport out there. However, it takes a lot of mental effort to be a professional person in gymnastics. That's because, you know, 1 foot at the wrong time or 1 inch at the wrong time, and you could be dead or you could be quadriplegic. And just because of how much focus it takes in to excel as someone in gymnastics. You know, if you've ever watched a gymnastics show before, you'd notice how prior to starting, everyone seems to be dead silent. Everyone is looking at the person who's on the stage or who's performing. And so I appreciate and I hold a lot of appreciation for anyone who does gymnastics, to be honest. You know, if I was like 3 years old, I'd probably speak up and tell my mom to like enroll me in a gymnastic class. Too late now.
It's never too late. If you really want to learn gymnastics, you can always start.
Right.
All right, so we're concluding towards our interview, Ibrahim. So I'm gonna end off by asking, tell me about an interesting case that you helped work up during your medical training that really stuck with you.
Okay. So the hospital I work at, the hospital that is affiliated with my school, is a tertiary care hospital. So we see a lot of cases that are rare, that you usually don't see at other hospitals. But the one case that stuck with me was the case of a patient who had pulmonary vein-occlusive disease. Same patient actually presented to Dr. Ravi on one of the student VMRs. The reason was not just because of how complicated the case was, it was because this patient specifically, I think some of the people in the audience were also on that VMR. If you recall that patient, she was a 20-year-old female. She was a college student. She just started realizing her symptoms all of a sudden. And the attending and the chief resident on the team at the time wanted me to deliver the bad news to the patient, to break the bad news to her. And I felt that I understood the patient simply because of how young she was. I am 23 years old, so I am not that far away from her age. And I know that I would be devastated if someone told me that you had a disease and you probably only had a couple of months to live by. And I remember when we made sure that she was actually, prepared to hear about her diagnosis and everything, and I told her diagnosis, and the chief residents and the attending were also in the room with me. She just took it in, with a lot of grace. She was like, if that's the case, and if my day is gonna come, I'm not really afraid of death. And I still remember one sentence that she said, because her condition was a genetic condition, so it ran in her family, and her sibling also had the disease, and they passed away because of it. She said, if there's something that I'd be excited about, it would be that I would be meeting my sibling very soon. And I think it goes above and beyond to show how much grace she had as an individual, but also how much power and how mature she was.
Wow, what a great case. I'm glad that you were able to be part of that. Well, Ibrahim, this concludes our interview. It was a pleasure to interview for our program, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today as well.
Oh, wow. Ibrahim, that was phenomenal. I think, how do you feel after this interview? What emotions do you have after being put through this stressful situation?
I'm actually very thankful for you guys for letting me on here today. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience. I'm feeling pretty great, to be honest. It felt more as a conversation rather than being asked a question and then me having to answer it. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I would say is, or the technique I use is, you should be leaving the interview feeling like you had a conversation, because you are also interviewing the program. So if you are in an interview where you're being asked multiple questions and it's just like question after question where they're just putting you through a grinder and you feel fatigued after it, mentally exhausted, and you feel like, oh, I didn't do a great job, you sort of have to question also, is that the program I want to go to? So I would say a welcoming program, a all-encompassing program, a program that's interested in you and is mindful of your interests and wanting you, should be at least giving you or reflecting that in their interview when they talk to you. So very good answers to the questions, I would say. And first of all, just setting the stage. So Ibrahim, you have a very good background, so you don't want a very busy background. What I would suggest, though, when everybody does the interview, is lift up the computer to be eye level. But what I noticed, you have maintained eye contact. Your signal, maybe you're on Wi-Fi, it did cut out. So be very careful, especially if you're interviewing from far away. A lot of times the momentum of the interview is broken up because of poor Wi-Fi connection. So what I would recommend to people is have a hardwired connection, and also make sure you have a good microphone so we can hear you. Sometimes I've had applicants interview from far away and the audio is kind of muted and I don't understand the person that's trying to communicate. So you definitely, there was a level of professionalism and you also were answering the questions within the allotted amount of time. So you don't want to talk too much as well, because you have only a certain amount of time, maybe 20 minutes, and you don't want to take up the time of the interview with like all the with these long-ended answers, because then they don't know much about you. If you take over the interview and you're giving a lot of long answers, then there's less time for us to give you questions. So try not to take over or usurp control of the interview from the persons that's conducting the interview. And then we started off, Jas started off with these what we call behavioral questions. So you notice there was some kind of icebreakers in there to kind of make you comfortable, give you a question that's a little uncomforting, or maybe asking you a situational sort of a question, like what would you do in this circumstance? So basically, programs are trying to figure out, are you a good fit for our program? Are you a person that has or exhibits good communication skills? So you definitely checked all those boxes. And also, are you professional, respectful? Can you provide situations or examples where you were empathetic to a patient? You truly cared for patient? Are you hardworking? Do you have initiative to work hard, especially stress? What do you do under stressful situation? Because residency is stressful. So we want to see or want you to provide an example of a stressful situation in your life. That's why we have these questions. So what's interesting, these behavioral questions are the most difficult questions that you might face in interviews. And what's interesting, we borrowed that from the business model. So it was sort of recommended now in residency interviews to adopt this business model of behavioral questions. So what they usually encompass are these core list of competencies, like how to be a good resident, how to be a good physician. And usually there's a three-pronged answer format for these, right? So one is, tell us about a situation where you were stressed, like Jas asked you. Second, what action did you take to remedy that situation? And what was the outcome? So when you answer that kind of a question, describe the situation. I had an angry co-student, I had an angry resident, I had an angry patient, and then what did you do? And then what was the outcome? Was the issue then resolved? Was there something that came out of it? Did it conclude well? Did the patient or the person that was angry, did the situation simmer down appropriately? So there's things like, tell us a time of when you worked under pressure, stress in medical school, time you made a mistake. So you answer that one pretty well as well. So any feedback, Jas, that you got from these questions? I think Abraham did a really good job.
Yeah, no, I think fantastic. You nailed everything, Ravi. But the one thing I'm just gonna share, this is, Abraham, not for you, this is for everyone. One tip that I learned, I like kind of acquired myself. Even if you know what you're going to say, it's okay to slow it down and pause before you actually answer the question, because I think for most of us, we probably have a general idea of what we're going to say for a certain particular question, but you don't want to sound rehearsed. So one thing you can do is pause, or if you don't like silence, like I don't like silence, so you can always say, oh, that's an interesting question, let me think about that. Or you can say, oh, I didn't, that's a wonderful question, or that's such a funny question, or something like that, that gives you like that 5-second pause or time. And it doesn't make it seem like, you were practicing in a mirror the night before. So that's just a big tip or pearl on the side. And like, sometimes we can pick that out as interviewers, that like, okay, this person like has all the questions ready to answer, then it kind of defeats the purpose. Then if you're not having a conversation, then you're just, and like I was doing something where, Abraham and I are just kind of going back and forth, and we're like having a conversation. There will be some interviewers that will not give you any feedback, meaning like, oh, that's a great answer or anything. They'll just stay silent. Don't let that trip you up, because that's just maybe them trying to like not give away anything. But then again, like, Ravi mentions, like, maybe this is a program where they're a little too, like, maybe their personalities don't mesh. But just gonna give you, like, don't let the lack of feedback throw you off. That doesn't mean you're doing bad. That's just how that interviewer might be.
Oh, great feedback there, Jess. I think that's very important. Yeah, you'll meet all sorts of interviewers along the interview path, and don't be thrown off. We're not all looking to slip you up, so just be careful. At the end, I'll tell you a couple of situations that I know about or have gone through, and just to sort of like Yusuf is mentioning in the chat, practice, practice, practice. Just be careful. Also, don't be too rehearsed, like you mentioned. I've had scenarios where people I can imagine them having post-it notes around their computer and are just looking and reading off. And I've seen that, like, person looking to the left and looking to the right and reading off the most common sort of answers to the question. So always be careful. Don't make it look too obvious, I would say. All right, on to the next. We're sort of running a lot out of time. We're at the 137 mark, but I think this first one was really important. So we'll move on to Marcela. And are you ready, Marcela?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so hello, Marcela. Great to have you interview with our program today. I'm going to start with our first question, which is, if you could describe yourself in one sentence, what would you say?
So I think I would say that I am a big dreamer and that I have a lot of determination towards my dreams.
And could you elaborate on that? Why dreams?
I think I am saying that because I was born in a very small village. And since I was growing up, like reading books and having my family around, I had a lot of dreams about like studying or, going abroad and being a doctor. So I had to work very hard to pursue those dreams. So I had to go to another school in another city, travel there to study for my dreams. And then now once again doing these steps and doing observerships in the US. So I would say that those are a lot of my dreams, and not also only mine, but my family's too.
Great answer. I love that answer. And now tell me, what did you enjoy most during your clinical rotations?
So I would say that during my clinical rotations, my favorite things would be the first to do the detective job, finding answers. And during the clinical rotations, you kind of some of the answers, or how to get to those answers. So that was very exciting. But mainly to be able to talk to the patients and explain to the patients, that have that connection, that relationship, the communication with the patients, so they could understand what was going on with them. And you could explain the plan, you could explain your reasoning there. Those were my favorite things.
Awesome. What would you say is a strength of yours?
I think my biggest strength is something that my family and my friends, they also would agree on, that is that I'm a very patient person. Since I was growing up, I used to be very, very patient in general. And I think that's good for like conflicts or dealing with like other people around me. So like with residents, attendings, and my colleagues. And mainly with the patients, being able to be patient when the patient is upset, or you have a conflict there, or you need to explain something, or delays or other things related to that. So I would say that's my biggest strength.
Awesome. And then on the flip side, what would you say is a weakness of yours?
I think growing up, I was very shy. So it was always difficult to me to speak in public. And for the medical field, and especially medical education, that's something that I really like. It's essential. So I have been trying to leave my comfort zone. I even joined the Clinical Problem Solvers group, and they were helping me a lot with that. So we have like online meetings with everybody all over the world. And also, I think another thing is that, like I mentioned, growing up, I didn't have a lot of opportunities just for being in a small place, a small school. So I noticed that lately I have a hard time saying no to some things, or even like being trying to work on delegation or like priorities on the things that you like to do. So that's something that I'm working on.
Excellent, excellent. And then if you could be a color, what color would you be?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I would be green, just because it reminds me of my country, Brazil. But also because green it's so alive, you know, when you go to a place and everything is green, it's growing, it's alive, it's moving. So I think I would be green.
Oh, green's a lovely color. And if you didn't pursue medicine, what would you have done instead, you think?
I think I would maybe do some lab work. I like infectious disease, so maybe like handle with some bacteria, things like that, or maybe be a cook. It's one of my biggest like pastime activities, but I'm not sure if I would be good doing that professionally.
Oh, excellent answer there. And lastly, what are you most proud of in your journey to through medicine?
I think my degree, being a doctor, is the thing that I'm most proud of. Just because I had to go through a lot to get this degree to study. And like my parents, my father didn't even finish high school. My mother had to do a degree that she was able to afford, not what she really wanted. So I really am really proud to go to the university and to be a doctor now. And I'm sure that my parents are also very proud about that.
Okay, great. That concludes the interview. How do you feel, Marcela?
Actually, it was very hard. I don't know. I think it's because we have a lot of people watching, and it has been such a long time since I had my interviews. I was trying not just to sound too rehearsal, you know, because like Jess said, I think that's the worst thing that can happen, you know, just feel that you know the answers. And I noticed when I was interviewing, sometimes you get to a point that a lot of questions are going to be repetitive, and you're just going to be, you know, like it's automatic, you know what you're going to answer because you already answered that question a lot of times before. So I think that was like very difficult to me. But yeah, but it was great. It was good. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, you're great too. And from a source that interviewed you last year, they said you were a lovely interviewee. So they
Thank
really
you.
appreciated your interview. So you're a professional interviewer. You're genuine. That's what I would say. You want to come across genuine. So you're right. When you interview, you should be rehearsing and practice, and like others said. So this is like we didn't really have practice because these questions were not out there for too long, so they didn't get a chance to practice. But what I love, just going through the questions, though, very genuine, I would say. And the first question, like tell me about yourself or describe yourself in one sentence, and just the dreams, I think was very good. So I'm trying to ascertain, like, what is it about you that would make you a great fit in my program or any program. See, when you've gone to the interview stage, you pretty much have your foot in the door, and that interview will sort of make it or break it. You have a lovely, fantastic interview like Ibrahim and Marcela just did. And when it comes time for program directors and leadership to review the rank order list, they will remember you from the interview. Like, oh, this was a lovely interview. I want to put this person higher up because this is a good fit in the program. So this dreams I thought was great because to me, it shows that you have drive, you have initiative, you have faced hardships in your journey through medicine. And you also told me what motivates you. So I think those are great attributes that if you come to a program, you will bring to that program. And then asking about what you enjoyed most, definitely, like what kind of things you enjoyed during your rotations is important too, because medicine gets long, right? You already internship, and then you're going to go through the winter doldrums, and you need to keep that motivation up. So you have to enjoy what you do before the honeymoon period is over. You started residency, and then you're all of that shine and glimmer falls off, and now you have to work and go through different rotations. So they want to see, are you able to maintain that momentum throughout your first year? Because it is difficult. And these two questions, strength and weakness, I kind of threw that in there. They're not the best questions, but sometimes you need to prepare for these, because sometimes some of us, we're not professional interviewers. You have faculty that don't take a interview course, so they won't give you the best questions. And if they're lacking questions, they may just throw these two questions at you. So just be prepared. And the toughest one from my experience interviewing for like many years, weakness. And a lot of people don't really want to open up, but I think it's fine. Like, okay, public speaking, that's fine, because you know what? If program loves Marcela, we will take her and we will practice and make her a very good public speaker. So this gives us something to work with. So the most common thing I hear is time management. Okay, I'm not great at time management. So which can be, but then sometimes I'm like, what really strikes a chord with me is like something like that. Okay, I'm not a great public speaker. If you didn't do well in your step, I'm not a great test taker. Why? Because of X, Y, and Z, which is okay, because a lot of programs are holistic. They don't want just high scores. They want also at least to recruit from people that may not have the high scores, because they may bring something else to the program. So I know many people that don't have the best scores and become very good clinicians. So you may also want to give a great or a good answer for that as well, and an honest answer if you didn't score well on your step 1 and step 2. So those questions can be difficult. The color, I think these are fun questions, and it also relaxes the temperature in the room a bit, and also it's fun. You create a sort of a harmonious interview at that point. Sort of stop, de-stress the room a bit, and then move on to the next stressful question. And I just love this question as well. What would you do if you didn't do it? So my question, I would try and be a professional soccer player or something. So another fun, so that we want to see like what else do you have in your background. And again, this year we don't have the box where you have all your hobbies and stuff. So it's great to be able to elaborate on that and tell programs like, what can I do? What other things can I do to de-stress from the rigmarole of internship and residency? And also what are you proud of? And I thought that was a great answer as well. Yeah, everybody's proud. Maybe you're the first physician in the family, so you're proud of achieving this degree and getting to where you were in facing many hardships along the way. So thank you, Marcela. And to finish off, Jas will interview me, which will be kind of different. Usually I do all the interviews, but this will be sort of a fun task. And I guess we'll get started.
And just before we do, Ravi, I just want to quickly answer a question. Navrup asked, is it okay to go into an emotional story related to your family or personal life, or does it appear cliche? I think that's a very important question. And Ravi, would love to have your opinion, but one of the things I gave feedback during the personal statement workshop is that personal statement is personal, meaning make it independent or unique to you. So if you have a story that really fits the question well, and it really highlights you and puts you ahead of others and makes you stand out, even if you do get a little emotional, or if it is a hard story to tell, it is still you. And that, and if it's something that's important to you and it's important to your character, I think it's okay to share that story. But Ravi, would you agree, or is there certain things that you would say absolutely not, stay away from?
I think so. I think sort of walk it through, like you mentioned, think about how deep you want to go into it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, because it's genuine, right? You have had hardship, it's genuine. That's what makes you or is a part of you. So if you may regret later because you left it out of the conversation, so it actually will make you appear more emotional, caring, empathetic, and maybe strike a chord with the interviewer. But every interviewer is going to be different. So I think it's important, but also be careful. Don't let it take up the majority of your interview, because you also want to show them all your other attributes as well. So no long-winded answers, but also do open yourself up and at least present what you bring to the program and why should they take you over another candidate.
Awesome. All right, let's get started. Hi, Ravi. My name is Jazz. I'll be interviewing you today. Thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jess. I'm very very happy and to be here today, and appreciate you interviewing me today.
Pleasure all mine. All right, so let's get started. So, Ravi, why do you want to be a physician?
I think I've always had this passion for medicine, and that allowed me to apply to med school. And I've been very eager to learn medicine through my rotations. I've developed a love for medical cases and trying to solve puzzles. And I think also it's a discipline where it allows me to express my emotions, to be able to help people, to be compassionate and caring. So I think I have a great attitude towards medicine. I've done a lot of hard work, and I think I should become a physician, a good physician.
Awesome. All right. So, Ravi, we get thousands of excellent applicants. Why should we choose you?
Oh, great question. I think I should be a great fit for internal medicine. I love reading medicine. I read a lot during my basic science years. So I loved physiology, pathology, and then moving on to the clinical years, I was able to apply all those principles, and it was very exciting to be actually in the clinical realm. And I got to work very well within a team. I did all these US clinical experiences, and I got letters which attest to my ability to perform in a team-based approach. And I got very used to the workflow, so I was able to do notes, and I'm very efficient with notes. And also I was able to communicate very well with families and patients. And if I didn't do a good job, the feedback from the team helped me to become a better clinician and also communicator with patients. And I think I also got to present cases, and I think my ability to professionally present these cases in various sort of conferences also makes me a good candidate for your program.
Awesome. And I guess one other question I would ask is specific to our program, what would you add to it or contribute to it?
I think with your program, you deal with a large number of immigrant population there, and patients with all different nationalities and backgrounds. And I'm coming from a family of immigrants, and I think I bring a lot of experience in that realm as well. And I can relate to patients, immigrant patients as well, coming from different backgrounds. And I think it's an important duty would be of mine to practice communication with these patients as well, also to practice empathy, tolerance, and also to be able to be a good listener and listen to these patients and be able to understand their problems and dilemmas. And then if you look at my CV as well, you can see that I speak Spanish very well, so I'm able to communicate with our Spanish population as well, which is important. Practicing in the environment that your program is currently located. So I think that's a good strength of mine.
That's great, Ravi. I was looking at your CV, but it was like 6 pages long, so I got lost halfway through. So, all right. So, as you know, medicine is very diverse, and there's a lot of different programs and specialties. Why did you choose this specialty specifically?
So initially, I didn't really intend to choose the specialty, but when I went through medical school, I was like, let me look at all the different specialties. I really enjoyed pediatrics, but then the children would cry when they look at my beard. So I was like, okay, maybe I can't practice in peds and so on, and then move on to OB-GYN. I thought it was very interesting. But when I got to medicine, I just loved, again, the collaborative team-based approach. And also during the rotations, I just loved being able to admit patients and then think about the patients and then be able to incorporate practice-based learning, system-based learning as well, evidence-based medicine, management reasoning, diagnostic reasoning, clinical reasoning. So many cognitive tools to help me make a diagnosis and also be able to impart treatment and help these patients in their presentations to these institutions.
Awesome. And then I guess I am going to have to ask this. How would you explain your low step 2 score?
So I would say my steps aren't probably at the pinnacle where they should be, but they don't really define my full potential as a clinician. I studied really hard, but I think my study techniques weren't effective. And I did put in a lot of time, and I do love reading. But however, I think I had a difficult time coping with the length and breadth of the exam, and I don't think I paced myself very well. So if I have a determination, if I was able to repeat the exam, I would definitely change my approach, and I think I would be more successful. But again, it's something I accept, and it's something that I may have prepared not too well for. So it is my fault and a lapse on my judgment for not preparing well. But I would sincerely say I would adopt different study techniques. I've been reading about how to study for exams, test taking skills, and I think I'm also studying to improve my gaps in knowledge. And I'm reading currently cases on human DX. I'm reading CPCs on NAGM. I'm also reading other platforms, trying to hone my skills in trying to improve my skills in clinical reasoning. So I'm doing a remarkable amount of work in reading simulated cases on various platforms to improve my knowledge. And then my letters do attest to my ability to perform well in the clinical realm. So one of my letters talked about a young patient coming in with chest pain, and then I was able to then look up what the cause of chest pain and was able to diagnose a very rare condition.
Very impressive. Thank you. Yeah. I guess the next question I wanted to ask you is, how do I know you can show initiative and you're willing to work and put in the hours? Because residency is not easy.
I think my experience in working in sales, working in the fast food industry, and also working in other industries like transportation, I've worked in very difficult areas, and that shows my genuine ability to work hard under stress and pressure. But I think I'm also motivated to be ready for residency because I am working hard to improve my knowledge. Again, participating in case conferences online in the virtual world as well, and also doing human DX cases, and also be attending clinical problem solvers, VMR, to learn how to think through cases in the American system and the format of how to present cases using the history, physical, and so on, that format. And I think my US clinical experience has been very robust, and I've gone to experience a wide sort of variety of different, team-based approach in the hospital, from critical care to emergency room to floors. So I think that attests to my ability to work hard and be ready on day one for internship.
Great. I guess the next question I will move on to is, tell me about a conflict with your colleagues and how you handled it.
Oh, so I was studying in a group for steps with a friend, a couple of friends, and then I thought I got the question right, but then they said it was wrong, and we looked it up, and I think my answer was along the right path. And we had this disagreement, and I got very angry at my colleague, and they also got angry at me, and then we had to be separated. And I was very mad, and I didn't talk to my friend for a long time. So I then refused to participate in any more study sessions with that person because they didn't accept my answer.
Interesting. And did you try to reconcile that afterwards, or that was
No,
it?
I refused to reconcile because they were wrong.
Okay. And then moving on to the next question is, tell me about how you develop rapport with your patients and provide an example of your effectiveness in developing rapport.
I think being a good listener. So not only asking the questions to the patients, but also pausing and asking the patients, listening to what they have to say, because a lot of times we don't listen, we sort of rush to judgment and talk over them. So I think understanding patients' communication, state of mind is really important. And also then sitting down with the patient at eye level and then communicating with them, I think is very important. And it actually improves patient communication through feedback or scores to the institution as well. So I think those are sort of interesting things that we can incorporate into our patient interaction. Also helping them with other non-medical related duties, like helping them to position if a patient says, oh, doc, can you help me move? And not just calling the nurse to do that, but I could do that as well, or feeding the patient while we're questioning them in the morning.
Great. I guess the next question I wanted to ask is, you walk by a room and a staff member is shouting at your patient. How would you respond to that?
Can I take us 5 seconds to answer that question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. What I would do is be non-judgmental, and I would first wait till the staff member exits the room. I would go to the patient and ask them, are they okay? Ask them their version of the story. And then after that, go to the staff member. Before being judgmental and critical, I would ask them about their experience with the patient. So for instance, just experiencing that, I might rush to judgment and think that the nurse is wrong and the nurse did something wrong, but it could be that the patient could be difficult and may have done something inappropriate to the nurse. So I would do that and then offer feedback to sort of diffuse the situation. Also make sure the patient is okay and the nurse is okay. Then I may report this to the nursing leadership to help maybe reassign the nurse if it's something that may affect the nurse throughout the day.
I'm glad that's the steps you would take. Thank you for sharing that. And then last question, Ravi, before we wrap up, what kind of learning environment will allow you to thrive?
Oh, I think a learning environment where they would have a safe platform for learners, something that's encouraging, inviting, open-minded, non-biased, and also listens to all stakeholders that are involved in the program. So something where we feel safe both mentally and physically as well. So something that is also imparts energy, enthusiasm to learn. So that also is very, very important. And I think having minimal distractions, a clear plan for the day, a routine schedule, and that should actually help performance and impart effective teaching for learners.
Awesome. I think, it was a pleasure to get to know you today, Ravi, and thank you for coming by to interview with our program. I wish you the very best in your application cycle.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Phew. Okay. So what do you think, Jas?
You definitely caught me by surprise by your answer to the colleague conflict. If we had more time, when I was chief, we definitely had some weird answers or interesting answers, and I would have definitely dug more into that if we had time. So I would have probably asked, well, in residency, you're going to work with co-residents that you may disagree with, and how would you respond to that? So I think that's the one main thing that really stood out that I feel like could have become a red flag for a program director or an APD, just because in residency and even in your career, you're going to work as a team, and you're going to have disagreements. There's not going to be any situation, unless someone's going to say that, ice cream is not the best dessert in the world, then I'm going to have a disagreement, but you're going to have a disagreement for almost everything. So and to say that you just, stop talking, now that may have been the truth. Now that may have been a genuine statement, but I would be cautious I would have said that, okay, this is how I handled that situation at that time, but this is what I learned from it. And going forward, if I have disagreements with friends or colleagues, this is how I will try to reconcile or try to better myself in that situation. That was the main thing that I kind of felt like could have been a stamp of red flag, especially when the committee gets together. But some really good things that were like, I loved when you paused and said, okay, can I have a moment to just think about this question, which really showed that you thought about it and it came off genuine and it wasn't rehearsed. Most of your other questions were eye contact, you have your background blurred, you were clear and articulate, and I asked some very well, I mean, your questions that you gave me, they were very difficult to answer. And not once did I sense that you were rushing or you were nervous. You said them with confidence. And I think that in a whole statement says a lot, because sometimes program directors or APDs will ask tough questions, not because they really want to know what your answer is. They want to see how you respond to them. Like the most interesting question that I got when I was an interviewee was they asked me, what is my favorite cookie flavor? And it was such a weird question to ask. I wasn't expecting it. And I turned it into something where it just shows something about my personality by saying I like a mint chocolate chip cookie. So it kind of one of those things where program directors will sometimes try to ask questions that will throw you off, but take a pause, and like exactly what Ravi did. He said it with confidence, he was clear, and it was systematic. But that was my feedback. Overall, it was good, except for that one question.
Jas, I'm so happy. I didn't know what to expect, but I really am appreciative that you came on and you're sharing your wisdom, because I was running these sessions for the last 2 years and I don't know everything, but I'm just listening to you. It's just you're imparting so much wisdom and just experience, and I think everybody that's here today can benefit from this in the interview. So yeah, I just kind of want to change it up and give an answer, which would be, you mentioned red flag. Be careful, because programs are looking for red flags in your application, because it gives them a very simple, you are doing their job for them. You are giving them a reason to then push the application into a DNR list. So every program has this DNR list or something they call, where that application goes to slowly die off and not be retrieved. So be careful. Don't give any ammunition to then put your application out of contention. So it's very important. And I like that also, that if you have difficulty like this cookie, I just know chocolate chip cookies, but you kind of put in a situation like, okay, let me think about it and pause, which is absolutely fine. And like Jasdeep said, that this allows us to see that you can stop and think and analyze and give a very thoughtful answer as well. So that pretty much, you saw 3 interviews, and I think these pretty much are going to be your questions. I would say these are the most common questions. My interview was difficult, I think, but you want to go through an interview where it gets cut up a bit with, like, tell me about a favorite hobby or interest or something. So that way it varies. Otherwise, the continued stress, like I do these things, but I haven't been interviewed for a while, but I was stressed. But varying it up would be helpful from interviewers. But yeah, pretty much I would say in conclusion, we're a little over time. So definitely, first of all, determine your interview background format. Research the programs, and I'm going to get to the really important part at the end. So know about the program and each person, and reflect about what you want to say. What are your best attributes and what you can bring to the program? And then highlight key qualities and also address desirable personality traits like empathy, communication skills, desire to help, and also contribute in any way that you can. Practice. Get people together and just ask questions, because then the nervousness will then simmer down. And from experience with other people, their anxiety then settled down. And when they went into the interviews, they didn't have that anxiety. They were like off to the chases or off to the race, and didn't have any hindrance of nervousness. And then try and perfect those questions. Again, like Jas mentioned, don't make it very rehearsed. Try, because each time you answer these questions, your response will change a bit. And I think also be careful of what we call like do not ask, or what we call illegal questions. You know about that, right, Jazz? So each program will send out a module to people interviewing to not ask these questions. So there's certain questions that could probe about your marital status, plans for family, and why? Because if you're in residency and you will get pregnant, then it could, you may have to leave the program for a couple of months, but it is illegal to ask that if there is any plans for children. And so there is a law that prohibits this. So gender discrimination, sexual orientation, race, religion, national origins, political views, age, ageism, disability is also frowned upon. So if you do get these questions, you have the legal right not to answer those questions. So you can politely refrain to answer that question, and it should not be held against you. I think it would be very cruel if somebody wanted to test you with a question like that. I think that's putting you in a very uncomfortable situation, but definitely do not answer any one of those questions. And I think to close it out, that pretty much is I would say, my tips. But anything to close out, Marcela, since you've been through this before?
Yeah, so I think I would say that something that I try to keep in mind too, I was practicing with Ravi, and he told me that something very important is to be a good listener too. So make sure that you are also like listening to the program and to the person that's interviewing you, because I felt that I was trying to get so prepared for the questions, and sometimes you have interviews where they just want to talk. And I talk in general, they don't have questions, or they start with, do you have any questions for me? So you have to be prepared for those type of things too. So it can be very different. And also, I think something that I would add, and that was kind of advice that I got from you, Ravi, to kind of schedule the interviews, like maybe your favorites, know the timing that you're going to schedule them. So you have like a couple of programs before that you can kind of practice and relax, but not too much towards the end, because then you're going to be so tired and the questions are going to sound repetitive for you. So that was also something that made a huge difference for me.
Oh, great feedback. Yeah, definitely. And that attests to your success in matching last year. So you did very well along the interview trail. And again, I heard back that your interviews were memorable. So great job. And that you actually reminded me of questions. So you will get a chance to ask questions to the program. There are questions which you have to be mindful of. So don't ask questions about is there moonlighting opportunities and so on, because then PD program directors may take that the wrong way. Oh, you're just interested in doing some extra work or so, things like that. So definitely scour the internet. There's so much out there, and be wary of companies that will charge for interviewing and helping you ace the interview. It's all free, I tell you. You didn't subscribe to any company. Although you can look at their websites and look at the questions and things like that, but a lot of the CPS family people that viewers all did well last year. Students I had did well last year, and none of them subscribed to these companies. And you can just 2 or 3 of you get together and just ask yourself questions, and that way get ready for these interviews. And Ibrahim, any feedback?
If I honestly had to say something, I remember on one of the people that Deb and Yaz had invited onto the IMG VMR series said something along the lines of, you have to be careful with your words. I know sometimes since we're like English as a second language speakers, we might think that words are synonymous, but they carry so much weight. So if you use the word challenging, difficult, they might seem synonymous, but in reality, these are very much different, and each of which has their own weight. So just like think about the words that you're saying about during your interview before actually uttering them.
Great feedback. Great words of wisdom. Choosing your words wisely. So yeah, I appreciate that. And then lastly, Jas?
No, I think I said everything that I could have possibly thought of. I was just busy answering some questions in the chat, but no, this was great. Thank you for involving me in this presentation. I hope everyone learned something that they could apply to their own interview skills.
Excellent. So thank you, everybody, and I look forward to hopefully meeting a lot of you along the interview trail. And I wish you the best of luck and lots and lots of positivity in your interview trail. So take care, everybody. Thank you, Deborah and Yasmin, for arranging this. Thank you, Marcela, Jas, and Ibrahim. Take care. Bye.